Hey guys, what's up? And welcome back to another podcast with Jay Bussin and myself. We finally, more or less, have put our heads together with me, Jay, and Joe before he tragically passed away in a killer whale accident involving an extension cord, but we're not going to get into that.
I tried to warn him. Wasn't
Yeah.
worth the grilled cheese, but he had his heart set on it, man.
Yeah, he was consistent with continuity, if nothing else. He never faltered from the grilled cheese. You got to give him that.
Yeah. He
Anyways,
was a beloved part of this podcast for like 3/4 of one episode.
oh
May
yes,
he rest in peace.
fan favorite. I mean, it's a tragedy, to say the least. Uh, but we have more or less finally come up with a name other than just a generic, hey, this is a gaming podcast with this turd and this turd. Hey, come blah blah blah. And the name we have come up is 2-Bit. So from henceforth, we'll just say, hey, welcome to 2-Bit Gaming Podcast or 2-Bit Gaming or whatever we want. I don't know. Words. The title itself will just
It's
be
still a
2-Bit.
work in progress, but we're pretty much there.
Right. We're okay with it. It seems like a good fit. It's catchy, easy to remember.
Speaking of things that are unnecessarily complicated, don't make a whole lot of sense, and can be difficult to get straight, what are we talking about this week, Matt?
Politics.
Oh, gosh. You got to find yourself a new podcast partner.
You threw me off with your description of what we were going to be talking about. I got lost in the woods there.
Am I wrong, though?
No, not at all. We're going to be talking about Kingdom Hearts 3, as we talked about
Hard
last
to
week.
believe that they already made a third Kingdom Hearts.
That they already... It's only, 13 years that we've been waiting for this moment? I think.
Yeah,
My gosh.
I don't know. Kingdom Hearts 1 came out in 2002. I was 11.
Yeah, and they gave us a ton of things in between. It was a bunch of spin-offs and small stuff.
Dream Drop Distance and
There's a lot. There's a lot.
I can't even name them all. There's one of them's like Kingdom Hearts 0.2 Birth by Sleep, a fragmentary passage. Like that's the name of the game.
Right.
That's a real name of a real video game.
And then one's 2.8, which has multiple games within it.
Yep.
And the timeline is very difficult to piece together. It's really
my personal
interesting.
favorite is 358 over 2 days.
Right.
What kind of name is that?
Disney. Because we can.
I'd blame more Squeenix on that one than Disney.
Probably. But it's incredibly ironic that a game with such simplistic, cheesy dialogue has a story this freaking complicated and convoluted. It really is when you stop to think about it. Because, the overall dialogue is very old school Disney-esque. If it's just, it's just simple. Chances are, if you think there's a double meaning, you probably just overthought it. It's probably exactly what you thought they said.
The only thing that's difficult to really follow with the story in these games is, like, first of all, they retcon themselves like every 6 or 8 weeks, and second of all, it's just like there's so many people that are all the same person sometimes.
There's a lot of retcon, like Jay said. There's a good amount of time travel. There's a good amount of people becoming
they didn't
one.
even throw time travel in there until like 3 games ago.
Right.
Like we went so long without time travel, and then all of a sudden they were just like, no, we went back in time, and I was like, oh my gosh.
And then you have like 8 different versions of the main antagonist.
Same guy.
Yep. With different names. Like every single character potentially has a different name, because you have, if you want to break it down to like a simple version, you have kind of their light side and their dark side. It gets a little more complicated than that.
It's way more complicated than that.
Yeah, but just to be simple with it and not get into story stuff, because we're going to try to avoid that.
We're not going to talk about the story. We just want to talk about the game itself. This game looks absolutely beautiful, Matt.
It is. There, no false accusations of that one. It is stunning and beautiful, and I love it.
One of the best looking games on the PS4, because like I watched a lot of gameplay of like God of War for the PS4 Pro. I was watching someone play it on the PS4 Pro, and then I went home and played it on the regular PlayStation 4, the vanilla one. And they definitely use some tricks. Like they put a lot more fog into the game and stuff like that, so that like you can't see as far because the PS4 vanilla is not as powerful. And I definitely felt a little bit cheated. But even the basic PlayStation 4, like the launch date PlayStation 4, this game runs at 60 frames per second. It's absolutely beautiful. There's no tricks. There's no there's no like loading scenes between areas or anything like that. It's just like once you land on like a planet or whatever, or like in a Disney game, whatever the frick it is. But there's like it's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. There are a few loading scenes, but it's not anything crazy.
Well, they used to be like when you'd walk around Traverse Town or Twilight Town or whatever, they were like different districts, and each one had to load. But all that's gone now.
Yeah, all that's gone. It's about the only time you get a loading screen is when you're jumping to another world or something drastic has to load.
Yeah. Like a whole new part of the game.
So we talked about this not yesterday, I guess words. We talked about this last week already, but just to kind of reemphasize. So Jay himself has not personally played any of the Kingdom Hearts series. He's caught up more or less on some of the story as best one can, because even watching YouTube videos on it, you could still be really confused.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have a really good grasp of the story, but the games themselves, no, I haven't played, but I've seen full playthroughs of Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, a good amount of Birth by Sleep, a little bit of Dream Drop Distance. So I'm well versed in these games and how they work mechanically, even though I've not played them myself.
Whereas I've played all of the main three. I've played pieces of some of the other ones, but I have not beaten. The only ones I've beaten are just the main series. So Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and now playing 3. They're the only ones that, obviously I haven't beaten 3 yet, but on my way to it. Now the other ones I just played.
This game, as the time of this recording, this game has been out for about a week. So
right. And so that being said, what I'd like to do is just kind of take a minute to see what's going to come from Jay's mind in terms of questions about this game, coming from the perspective of looked into it a little bit and have an idea of it, but have not played it personally. And, like we said, we're still ignoring story things. We're not going to talk about any of that, so you don't have to worry about spoilers or anything like that. Right. But looking at that kind of topic, what are some things that you personally are intrigued by or wanting to know about this game on a personal level?
There's not too much. I mean, when it comes to where we both are in the game, and this is coming from Matt playing it and myself watching one particular Twitch streamer play through it, I'm actually further in it than he is. So I have a good grasp on this game. I like the battle mechanics are very interesting to me. Kingdom Hearts 1, back 17 years ago now, almost to the day, March 28th, 2002 is when Kingdom Hearts 1 came out. The battle mechanics were more or less just press X. That's all you did. You just ran around, mashed X, and you swung your Keyblade, you beat up the Heartless, you beat Ansem and called it a day, But in this game, and just through the years, the battle mechanics have changed so much in Kingdom Hearts 2. They introduced kind of, we press triangle now and then to do other things and whatever. And it's gotten so complicated over the years. I feel like in this game, they kind of took the best of all of them, and there's so many different ways you can manage a fight. You can run around and just kind of swing your Keyblade at everything, and, you'll do pretty well for the most part, but there's also so many different things you can do. There's, what I guess is kind of the equivalent of summons in this game, where you kind of turn into Disney attractions. It's weird. But it's interesting, it's the battle system seems very deep, and I like it a lot.
Yes. And it's very intuitive. It doesn't feel clunky or hard to grasp. It's pretty smooth by and large. There are a ton of those attractions type attacks that
Yeah.
you could easily go through an area and sometimes not even see the same one twice, depending on how often you use them. I mean,
I've already seen like 8 or 10 of them, and I'm only in like the third or fourth world. So
right. And, I mean, if you use them a lot, you'll see them recurring. But like if you just use them sparingly, you might go through a whole area and not see the same one used again, which is crazy for it to be that many in that short of a time.
Yeah, it's very grandiose. They're very over the top, but that's what this game is, you know.
Oh yeah, and there are some lengthy cutscenes right out the gate.
Yep.
Now I'm still in my current playthrough. Just for disclosure, I'm doing an actual recorded let's play of it, which is why mine's going a little slower than what it would be if I was just playing it freely, because I have to stop and then make sure the files are working right and get everything processed, and then I'll edit a couple, make sure that they come out okay before I proceed doing more. But there's just been a few already that I've gotten into the cutscenes and then looked at the timer. I was like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. So, like, just for an example, I wanted each of the episodes to run somewhere around 45 minutes or so. You know, it didn't have to stay on the dot, but just once I got to a stopping point and it was around that time frame, I was like, okay, let's just call this episode a day. And on episode 3, which I finished uploading the other day, it's not live or anything, but it's uploaded to YouTube. When I got to the 45-minute mark, I was already in a cutscene, and this specific cutscene basically lasted about half an hour. So by the time it was done, that episode was at an hour and a half, which is twice the length of the episode that
that's JRPGs for you, you know?
Yeah, and there were stopping points, but like they introduced new mechanics, and like I was trying to get to a save point because I was scared, because at the same time, like I was gonna have to stop once I got done with whatever I was doing. So without being at a save point, I was like, I don't know where this is going to pick me back up at, and I don't want to have to watch this half-hour cutscene again. Even if it's, you know, obviously I would skip it on the YouTube part, but I still have to sit through that if it won't let me skip it. So I was like, just please get to a cutscene. And then eventually I finally get there and looking like, yeah, this is literally an hour and a half long. So be prepared for some cutscenes.
Nice Lion King throwback.
But I mean, they're really good though. So like you get some good info out of it, and I'm not going to give any details, but story wise, out the gate, you don't get a lot of info.
No.
And where Jay's at, he may not even really have a ton. Like they're taking their time revealing what exactly is going on.
Well, Organization 13, which is kind of the bad guys, I guess, if you want to just simplify it, they're really cryptic. They don't say anything really straightforward. Things are confusing. And so there's that. I mean, there's even one scene where the bad guy just cuts off mid-sentence and it just fades to black, or just cuts to black. And it's just like, what?
Yep.
Like, this game's weird. It's supposed to be weird. They know what they're doing. It kind of reminds me of like watching Lost back when that show was coming out. For those of you that did that, I didn't watch Lost when it was on TV, but like I watched it on DVD after. And just every single time an episode was over, you're like, cool, I got one answer, but I have 40 more questions now.
And I mean, I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if this game resorted to doing some of the Lost crap, like traveling sideways in time or something ridiculous. Just making up something like, hey, we're going to do this now. Because they have been known to retcon quite heavily over the amount of games they have. It's very convoluted to keep up with stuff. We talked about this a little bit before we started recording today, because each character can potentially have freaking 2 names, because
just the way the game is.
Just the way the game is. And some of them have more than 2.
Yep.
So it gets really difficult to keep up with everything in that sense. Like you can kind of get an over idea of how the story works without too much of a problem, but knowing all the characters by name and having an idea of who that is when they just say that name gets a little tricky.
Yeah.
especially in the antagonist department, because
That's certainly true.
that dude's got many many different forms and names.
Like there's 13 of them.
Yeah, but tell me this, Jay.
Yep.
Are you at any point planning to actually play any of this series?
I've said this a few times now. Kingdom Hearts is pretty much a series that I will play if I ever became like a full-time streamer / YouTuber or something like that and had, 8 hours a day to dedicate to gaming because it was my job or something like that. I'd probably dive into this series, one game at a time, slowly taking a break between each one or something like that. But currently, no. When Kingdom Hearts 3 first came out, I thought about picking it up just because I got to admit, I'm pretty invested in the story at this point. As confusing as it is, like I said, I think I follow it pretty good. I have an understanding, and I want to know what happens next. I have questions. What happened to this? Are we going to hear about this, or was that just kind of some non-important thing? And like, I wasn't. I didn't want to wait for like a streamer to go live and then I missed part of it. So I have to wait till they're done to catch up on, what I missed and then can watch what they were doing. And I was like, maybe I should just pick up this game and play it. But then I looked over at all the games that I have that I'm currently playing through. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that.
You do have a list building up on you.
Yeah. And so I didn't want to add one more to it. Cause this Kingdom Hearts, it's a JRPG. They're big games. If you blitz through the story, it takes you about 30 hours. And you're not going to blitz through this game.
And that would be booking it from what I've been told.
Yeah. I just looked up what it is on How Long to Beat, which is a website that's pretty conservative on how long it takes to beat a game. And they said if you're just doing story, it's about 33 hours. So realistically, it's probably closer to 30. But
man, that's incredible. That's a large game. And
yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's a AAA JRPG. They're always big. And not always, but most of the time they're pretty big.
And even for those, let's say that if you just somehow by chance have never heard of this game, it'd be kind of shocking, but if somehow you just didn't hear anything about it, this game would still be awesome for you. Like, I know we're talking about how complicated certain things can be, but the amount of Disney worlds and characters you get involved with is just awesome. They do a fantastic job of the creation of each world, making it feel just like you would be interacting in that movie, basically.
Oh yeah, the attention to detail in this game is through the roof.
And it's not necessarily that you're going to follow the exact story of whatever was happening in those movies, but with just the design and the characters and what's happening, it's awesome.
That actually is one of the complaints I have about this game. I'm always critical of even the games I like. Some of the, basically the formula for Kingdom Hearts, pretty much every game kind of runs through this. You get a whole chunk of story at the beginning to set up the game. Excuse me. You run around to a bunch of different Disney worlds that has no importance on the plot. And then there's a big, huge plot dump at the end and a final battle. And that's kind of the way most of the games are. And some of the Disney worlds in this one are original, and you get there, not original, but like the story in them is original. Like, I don't want to spoil anything, obviously, but you right. Get there and it's characters that you recognize and maybe love because you grew up with them or whatever. But what's going on in that world is new. It wasn't the movie, it wasn't whatever. But then others of them, it's literally the plot of the movie. And you're like, all right, now I'm doing this part of it. And it's obviously shrunk down and condensed down like crazy or whatever. But like even down to like the music that's in them, like there's one of the worlds has a song in it. That's a pretty famous Disney song. And they literally sing the entire 4.5 minute song that you're just sitting there not playing the video game. And you're like, can I play the game now?
Right. And then I love the mix of old Disney and new Disney too. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you have a lot of traditional stuff that you grew up with, and then you have some plenty of new, like Big Hero 6 is in here that,
Yeah.
you know, and that's not even, is that even 5 years old yet? It's somewhere around that, if not
About ish.
less.
I don't remember. And there's even live action stuff. Pirates of the Caribbean's in this as well.
Right. There's a ton of new worlds to explore, which is just it's so awesome. And there's even some that aren't necessarily old or new, but maybe new to Kingdom Hearts, like Monsters Inc. making their way in there.
Toy Story's in here for the first time. Frozen's in here. Tangled's in here for the first time.
Oh gosh, there's so many good ones.
But there's some older ones too. Like one of the oldest worlds in Kingdom Hearts is Olympus, Hercules, and you revisit that world in this game as well.
Oh yeah, it's the very first world you go to.
Yeah, it's the tutorial more or less.
Well, yeah, which that one's been in every Kingdom Hearts as far as the main ones. I couldn't tell you if it was in the spin-offs.
I know it was in the friggin' Pokemon card one. I forget what it's called. Chain of Memories.
The Pokemon card one.
Because that's the one Kingdom Hearts game I have played is Chain of Memories.
Oh, so actually I've played one.
Yeah, it was for the Game Boy Advance. Like I didn't have a PlayStation growing up, so I didn't get to play. These were almost exclusively all on the PlayStation. And then one came out for the Game Boy Advance, which is Chain of Memories, which takes place between Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. And so I played that. And then by the time other ones started kind of being a little more cross-platform, like Dream Drop Distance was for the 3DS, I didn't care. And then when they announced 3 and 3 was coming out and it looked good, I was like, maybe I should catch up on these games. So that's kind of when I kind of started watching some Let's Plays and learning the plot summaries. If you're at all, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and plug 2 other channels. If you're at all curious of the plot of these games and you just kind of want to know, and then you can jump into 3 and kind of get a good understanding. If you want an accurate, good, well thought out, well scripted, well made video, Suggestive Gaming has a good plot summary. And if you want one that's funny and sort of accurate, you can watch Barry Kramer's on his channel. So those would be my recommendations. I've watched them both. You can get a good idea from both of them. Barry's is more comedy driven. Whereas the Suggestive Gaming one is more like just factual.
And if I remember in post, I will put links to those in the actual description of the video, so you make it nice.
Yeah, he won't.
Click on. Hey, you don't know that.
I'm 95% sure that.
How dare. So switching gears a little bit, and we're not going to go into this on every episode, especially not pre-E3, because there's not really a point to. But with the size of the 2 games that we've talked about in the first 2 episodes of this season, is kind of worth just bringing up in a short version, not necessarily going into crazy detail right now. But with these 2, especially right now, without a question, it's these 2. But even looking down the line of the games that are coming out this year, you can't help but think that this and Resident Evil 2 are probably going to inherently be front runners of Game of the Year for 2019.
Oh, geez. We're already talking about Game of the Year for 2019?
Again, on a very pulled back spectrum, but just, with the size of that these games are, it's kind of hard not to think about it in that aspect. But what I really wanted to ask was, I do believe that those 2 will probably both be nominees, unquestionably, I would say, just from the list of what we have thus far. But that's just based on right now. That could easily change. So just going off of that, do you have one? And we're going to look at the scores here in a second, which is why I bring this up now, so we can talk about this and then look at the scores and kind of see what the general public feel about this. But for you, from what you've seen of those 2, where is Jay leaning as far as which one would you put ahead as a front runner for Game of the Year? Not necessarily saying you're giving it Game of the Year, but which one do you think? 2? Yeah, out of those 2, which one do you think has a stronger chance of pulling that?
Here's my hot take prediction. Kingdom Hearts 3 will definitely be a nominee and will definitely be a front runner. Resident Evil 2 ain't even going to make the list.
Wow.
If I
Really?
get that right, I get a 3-point bonus lead going into the Game of the Year nominations next year because I got spanked last year. If I have that right, I get an extra 3 points. All right.
Okay.
All right.
I agree to these terms. You go for like a bold prediction out the gate.
Yeah, Resident Evil 2 is not even going to make the nominations. I mean, don't get me wrong. I respect it. I think it's fun, but it's a remake. It made some waves and kind of got overshadowed very quickly. I don't think people are going to even remember this game exists 2 months from now.
Wow. Okay.
Just because you've got Kingdom Hearts is out now, you've got Anthem coming out in a couple of weeks, you've got Sekiro Shadows Die Twice coming out in a couple of weeks, in a month and a half now or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You've got all these games. It's just that game's going to get overshadowed like crazy in 2019.
That's interesting.
It's nothing new. It's an old story with an old engine, but it's a different engine. That's all it is.
Yeah, I guess the same could be said for Call of Duty though.
Yeah, you're right, which is why Call of Duty didn't do so well at the Game Awards last year.
Yeah, fair. But they were nominated.
That's true.
That's where I'm kind of like, it's a very interesting thought, which I don't think it's inherently wrong. I'm just curious of what will actually happen.
Yeah. So what about you?
The interesting thing I wanted to point out, and reason why I kind of set this up, Resident Evil 2 got higher scores and reviews than Kingdom Hearts 3 did.
Fine.
Which, I mean, you know, me and Jay both kind of see reviews and scores much like Whose Line Is It Anyway, where the points don't matter and they're irrelevant, just like Canada.
And everything's made up.
Right. Just like every fact that we say on here, we don't fact check. We're just pulling stuff out of a hamster wheel.
Fact is in the biggest air quotes possible.
But yeah, so the average, if you take all of the big source reviews and scores of Kingdom Hearts 3, it kind of averages out to like an 8.8, give or take, or 88% or whatever, you know, which is still not a bad score, but Resident Evil still clocking in the 90s or the 9s. So, you know, they're actually coming out as a higher rank overall. Now, why that is, I didn't bother looking into the weeds of the reason.
Well, here's an interesting fact for you. 2 days after launch, I think it was, there were more people watching Kingdom Hearts 3 on Twitch than there were watching Fortnite.
Interesting.
That doesn't happen very often.
Now, I inherently believe Kingdom Hearts 3 would beat out Resident Evil 2 without question.
Right.
That part's not even a thought. But looking at the list of games that are coming out throughout the rest of the year, I do believe that since they typically nominate 5 to 6 games for Game of the Year, I would say Resident Evil, I wouldn't count them out.
Well, here's something else like that you got to take into consideration. The games that came out in December and late November will be on that list, i.e. Smash Bros. Is going to be on that list potentially, or at least, you know, a candidate. And there are plenty of companies like Nintendo, like Ubisoft, whatever, that will announce and release a game within a year.
Right.
Nintendo has, we know for a fact, 2 or 3 games cooking that will release this year that we don't even know anything about them yet. One of them, we don't even know what it is. So who knows?
There's plenty of games. There's plenty of games in the 3rd and 4th quarter of the year that we don't even know about that could come out and completely change this entire conversation. Which
there's going to be a new Pokemon game this year. There's going to be a new Animal Crossing game this year. Both of those are absolutely massive. I don't think Animal Crossing will make Game of the Year, but you know, things like that. And you know, Ubisoft tends to kind of play things close to the vest. Even Sony can play things a little close to the vest. It wouldn't surprise me if The Last of Us 2 comes out this year. In fact, I think it might be. So, you know, that's going to be a big one.
Yeah, if that one comes out this year, that
might be Game of the Year right there.
That would be a game changer because that one, I say that it's so difficult because to me that almost has the same thing that the Red Dead had going for it last year. You know, it's such a powerhouse game coming into a sequel to where you expect so much and then it presumably delivers, but it still didn't win because another powerhouse game came up out of nowhere. And I guess you could technically say God of War was a reiteration of a previous series, but I mean, my gosh, it was so just completely different from the other
Yeah,
ones.
I don't think it was a reiteration. It was a reboot. That was a brand new game. Just using old characters and plot devices or whatever. But the game itself was brand new.
Oh, especially mechanical, like not even close. They were night and day different. But they did borrow a lot of certain characters and story elements that they carried over with this, which they did with Kingdom Hearts 3 as well. Like there's if you're going to play this game, you can get by without knowing the previous story. Like you'll still enjoy all of the Disney stuff it has to offer. You'll enjoy the gameplay.
You'll be pretty confused though.
You would pick up pieces.
If you try to follow the plot, you're going to be like, what? But if you just want to play a game that's fun and beautiful and just ignore the plot, go for it.
Right. Now, you'd be fine with all the subplots of like when you go to the world and it's engaging and stuff like that. But the actual Kingdom Hearts plot would probably be pretty tough to go into blind, I would say. But
I'd agree.
But in fairness, they're not easy to go into prepared. If I'm being honest, like
yeah, definitely true.
Like I'm not saying it's the most complicated thing to understand, but just going back to the character stuff and it's so convoluted and like Jay said, there's sometimes where they don't even finish sentences and they just leave. You're like, wait, what was he going to say? Yeah. I need what? Why? What? I don't. Okay, what? And you don't really have a choice but to move on from there.
And again, once you introduce time travel into a series, everything just becomes just a giant facepalm half the time anyway.
Right. Which I mean, heck, in this one, all the way up to the second world, which if you've played Kingdom Hearts, you know who's going to be. But if you didn't and you're just catching up on it, you wouldn't technically know who the main antagonist is, even going into the second world at this point. They haven't outright said it yet. That you've seen some and you're starting to piece it together, but they have not, etched it in stone. Hey, this is the bad guy.
No, but I mean, if you have been following the plot along, then you know exactly who it is going.
Well, if you played any of the Kingdom Hearts, you know it's always going to come back to one person.
Yeah,
always. That's just how these games work. But the beauty of borrowing from Disney is you not only do you have a bunch of awesome heroes to work with, you have a bunch of awesome villains to work with too. So they're constantly bringing those in.
And usually, she's been an antagonist in most of these games, just kind of like
pretty much all of them.
She was like a main antagonist for some of them, and just kind of like a side antagonist for some of them.
She's been, I don't know what title you would give it, but a enemy of my enemy is my friend character in Kingdom Hearts 2.
Yes.
To where she was aiding you for a time. I mean, it wasn't necessarily for a good purpose, but I mean, she was still on your side temporarily.
Yeah, that was interesting.
So that they do a good job with mixing this stuff around. I was really excited to see Toy Story come into play here.
Oh yeah, Toy Story is my favorite Disney Pixar movie.
That's a powerhouse.
So I was pumped to see that.
Oh yes, just as it always has been. You're waiting for Donald to heal you, and then he does a magic spell that is not what you wanted, and then he's out of magic, and you're like, well, my healer had one job.
Goofy used all my potions.
And he didn't do it. Yep. Everybody's greedy and uses all the potions. There are, if I want to be, I'm trying to think. So like overall, I love the game. I'd probably be in the same ballpark of what the reviews are saying. Like I would probably go low 90s or the 9s as opposed to an 8. If I'm looking at the few problems I have with the game thus far, I'm still not incredibly far in. But if I have to diagnose some, they're taking their time delivering any concrete information story-wise, which is okay. But again, 4 to 6 hours into it, you should probably at least know who the bad guy is by this point. Or something, or at least know why Sora's memories are gone again, or something. which if you had played the side games, you would know that, but
Yeah.
there's plenty of people who didn't. So like, you need to point that out. You know,
I think this game is really working with the knowledge that you have played all the other games, or at least know what's going on. They don't do a good job of recapping the events of old games. They really work with the assumption that you know what's going on.
Oh yeah, they don't do much of any recap, to be honest. No. Like when they just, you know, if you didn't know the Aqua storyline at all, you're going to be just confused as all. What is happening?
Yeah.
Like, we got to get Aqua.
How is this character who apparently existed 10 years before any of this suddenly in the present? And who is she? And where is she? And
right. And another one, which I don't mind it per se, but there are a few combat mechanics outside of just there's a few extras that they give you that they don't do a great job of introducing, in terms of once, like they introduce it once and then okay, Godspeed kind of thing. Which a lot of games, it's not like the end of the world or anything, but when you have a game that has so much going on, it's nice to, when you first get something, you know, iterate it a couple times. Don't just give me one and be like, okay, go. Do what you want.
I'll give you that. And another big complaint I've seen, again, I haven't played the game, so maybe you could dive in a little bit more. Sometimes the UI of like the menus when you're doing like equipment swap outs and things like that can be a little janky because they don't, like when you're switching out armor or weapons or whatever, you can't compare what you have with what you want to switch out. So you have to like look at what you have, look at your stats, remember them, go over what you'd switch to, see what your stats would be then. Is that more? Is it better? Is it less? Is it worse? Is it, you know? Right. That's just like, that should be such a gimme in this day and age. Games have been doing that for decades.
Yeah, that's why it's a little frustrating. It's like, that's not even really new. That's a mechanic that's been around for a while now.
Yeah, like that's like games just should do that. I don't understand why they would make it harder on you to figure out which keyblade you want to use or which armor you want to use.
We did, me and several friends that I know that have played this game we all had complications in one area. I'm curious if the person you watched had the same complication. When fighting, you know, being in the Olympus world, you're in every single Kingdom Hearts game, you end up going to Olympus and dealing with the Titans, which is the storyline of the Disney movie Hercules, if you've never looked into it.
Yep.
And dealing with the one that's a tornado was very clunky. Very, very clunky. And that was actually my first death, as well as all the friends that I'm talking about. Like, we all had our first death there, and not because it was hard or difficult, but because it was so clanky and not smooth that we couldn't get to where we could actually hit the boss. Because since it's a tornado, you got to get really close to him, and it keeps launching you really far away. And there's some maneuvers you can do to kind of get there quicker, but by and large, it's a very cinematic fight to where it's doing it in stages to where you can only be close to him for so long before it's going to automatically push you back again.
Right.
And it was very clunky and really just not very smooth. That's the only one that's been like that this far, though. Like, the rest of them have not been that way. It was really weird. Did the person you watched have that same issue?
I watched two different people do that fight. And none of them had any issue with it. So
interesting. And when I say issue, I don't mean like we were sitting here like not being able to do anything and just cursing at the screen as loud as we can or anything like that. I just mean that, you know, like when I died, he was still down to his last health bar and was almost gone. But the reason I died is because I could not get close to him and stay there, or figure out if they were trying to teach me a mechanic to get there, or like I didn't know what the game was wanting me to do, because what I was doing didn't feel right, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it felt like it was taking too long. It felt like I was spending 30 seconds to a minute just hovering in the air, heading his direction, trying to get close enough to him where I could hit him. And then it's a time thing. So if sometimes you'd waste too much time just trying to get back to him, and then it would just repeat again. So we may have just all been doing something wrong. I don't really know, but they had the mechanic where you could warp to the debris that was floating, but when the debris wasn't there, you just had this huge gap between you and him of how to get there again. It was like, okay, what exactly am I supposed to do here other than just run the length of a football field only to be propelled right back? I mean, that's the only one that's happened with, and whenever my series drops, I'll try to remind you of that episode and let you see it and see if it was similar, maybe in regards to the other ones, but they just did it better than I did, maybe. But that's really the only complaints thus far. Now, I still have a ton of ways to go. I would still argue that, especially with Kingdom Hearts and how long they draw out tutorials, that I'm probably still in more or less the tutorial of the game, even being in the second world. So we'll see how that goes. But so far, I mean, it's wonderful. Like I said, I would still give it a 9, even with all those things being said. The like Jay said, the graphics are beautiful. The worlds that they've created are wonderful. The attention to detail is just
like I can't say enough about the attention to detail. I mean, like in one of the worlds, there's a poster on the wall. It's a huge poster. And instead of just making it like a flat texture against the wall, like you can see, because like no poster's perfectly flat against a wall. It's got little warps and bends in it here or there. It's detailed like that. There's a trash can that you can't see into because it's got something on top of it. But if you clip the camera in such a way that you can see into it, there's stuff in the trash. Like they didn't have to do that. That's such a small detail that's completely unnecessary, but they did it,
and did it well.
Yeah.
Like they no holds barred with this game. They went all out. And I have a theory about this game actually that I wanted to run by you and see what you thought.
Okay.
Now, it's like I said earlier, it's been 13 years since the last mainline Kingdom Hearts, specifically Kingdom Hearts 2. Right. I think 13 is right. It's something close to that. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's a possibility that the reason they waited this long was not actually to make it as good as it is? Because I mean, granted, I do think that was a big part of it, of just building material and just making it as good as it could be. But do you think there could also be an overarching thing of they knew what they were doing and waited this long, so not only they would have this, but they may already have Kingdom Hearts 4 or something else well in the works as well? Maybe not 4, but they may have a different name for it, or a massive DLC or whatever have you.
Yeah.
Because I mean, 13. I mean, that's a long time for just the sake of building up something. It's more of a theory than anything. But I mean, with the way that Kingdom Hearts stories go, a lot of times they're just so deep to where it could easily be a game that they wanted to tie into another one, perhaps because the story is so massive that they couldn't tell it in one game. I don't know. I haven't played enough, and again, we're not getting into the story. I haven't looked up any of it. I don't know how it's going to go or how it's going to end yet. So
no spoilers for Kingdom Hearts 3 in the comments on this one, please.
Right? Yeah, you'll get disabled if we see that. But I could be completely wrong on that, depending on. I mean, by all I know, the story could have a conclusion, and this could be the last one they ever make. I don't know. But
yeah, my thoughts on this, I think we'll see. I think this story that they've been building through all of these games is going to come to a conclusion in this game. With the main antagonist, I think I think the final battle will happen and good will beat evil, or maybe evil will be good. Like, who the frick knows? I don't. I'm sure plenty of people do. This game's been out for a week already. But I think that this main story with this cast of characters will be finished here. We might see some of them again. You know, I kind of think they'd be stupid not to make another Kingdom Hearts game, but I think they'd have to. It's kind of how I feel with like the Avengers and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. How like with the Avengers Endgame, I think that's going to be kind of I think we're going to see a lot of characters walk away after that movie, whether, you know, actors are just done with contracts or they just want it to be, you know, moving on. Like we're still going to see Marvel movies and we're still going to see a Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's just going to look very different. And I think we're going to see that with Kingdom Hearts as well. I think that, you know, because like, yeah, it's been 13 years since Kingdom Hearts 2, but it's only been a couple of years since the last game came out, you know, because they created, you know, 0.2 and Dream Drop Distance and Birth by Sleep and all these other games that came out between 2 and 3. So it's not like they've been making this one game for 13 years. They've been making this one game for like 3 years. So I don't think 4 is in the works. I don't even know if they really know what they're going to do with 4 or whatever they're going to reboot the series to be. But I think that we're not done with Kingdom Hearts, but we're done with this story. I think that's where we're at.
Interesting. Which, I mean, I could get by that as well. I mean, I definitely don't think by any means Kingdom Hearts is done, even without knowing the story. I don't think they're gonna. It's too much of a money maker. They're just not gonna drop it.
Yeah.
Especially not since Disney literally keeps expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding.
Keep buying stuff.
Because that I know of, I don't think they included Star Wars in this one, and they could easily go down that rabbit hole later.
There's a lot of people that want to see a lightsaber Keyblade.
Oh,
who knows if it's in this one? I don't know yet. Again, no spoilers.
Oh, that would be amazing. I really hope it is. That would be all. Oh gosh.
And I mean, the Avengers can be in Kingdom Hearts now too.
Right. As I said, there's so many things that. Well, they've been working on this game for a while. I think it's actually been more than 3 years.
Well, whatever it is.
That they announced it. So, well, I say all that to say that I don't think Star Wars and Avengers would even make an appearance in it, because I think when they started working on this was before all that actually, the contractual stuff of Disney absorbing those things became finalized, if that makes sense. So I don't think that might have overlapped with this, maybe. Could be wrong, but from anyone I've heard of talking about it without getting a spoiler territory, I don't think I've heard anybody mention anything Star Wars wise, at least yet. I would love to see it. I would love to be wrong. Oh my gosh, I would love to see a lightsaber Keyblade. That'd be fantastic. But we're going to go ahead and wrap up on that point for the day. Did have a final topic kind of wanted to bring up at the end here that me and Jay talked about a little bit before the podcast, just to kind of get your ideas on it as well, and kind of format it as a question of a day, more or less, to see how you feel about it. But where Jay lives, which, you know, he lives in the East River of the Nile, this has actually been going on for a while. It's called malaria. And we
good
really
harvest season though.
We really want to help him out. No, he, you know, Jay lives in the Northeast and I live in the Southeast. And the short version is gaming as an extracurricular activity, specifically in a school association kind of thing. So sports, more or less, like turning
esports,
or, you know, making video games into a competition thing to where it's organized sports, but with video games. And the state I live in has finally jumped on board with this, which, for anyone listening that doesn't already know, I live in Mississippi. So they finally jumped on board, and the High School Activities Association finally voted, and they're going to add video games as one of these options. Now, you have a lot of division on this. Most of it that I see that is opposed to it just doesn't understand, more or less. Like, I don't see anyone. I've yet to see opposition that actually made sense. If I'm being honest, like, most of it's rah rah, video games bad. Like, this is stupid. Why would you turn this into an activity? But like, the underlying point of it all is like, this is something wonderful for people who can't do sports, because there's plenty of people that would love to play sports, but they're just not athletic, or
their parents won't let them,
or too short, too tall, too skinny, too fat. I mean, there's
didn't make the cut, and just
it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just sport. I mean, they're not for everybody,
or they just don't like sports.
Yeah, or they just flat out don't like it, or they just don't fit in with that. There's so many different things, and that this could be anytime you have something to where kids growing up have the opportunity to participate in an organized competition. It's healthy. That is good. That is something that is always good. Like, it doesn't matter what it is to me. That is, within reason of being like a safe thing. Like, someone might bring up something ridiculous, but within a safe spectrum of things, like organized competition is a very healthy thing. Learning to work in group manners, if it's that way, or learning to have friendly competition, learning how to win in a respectful manner, learning how to lose in a respectful manner is great real world applications. As far as I'm concerned, like, I cannot tell you the amount of things that playing organized sports taught me in terms of real world things. Can't even be, and I didn't know that at the time. That's the funny thing about that. Is there, like, during that time, I wasn't thinking as the coach is sitting here just drilling me about something that just happened. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to learn how to apply this once I turn 20 or so and have to deal with a similar situation down the road. No, that was not a thought anywhere. And it's just kind of later when you stop to think about it, man, like, that really latched on that principle that was instilled in you there, and it carried over into other things. So I inherently, like, I would slap a meme on me and say, this is a good thing. Change my mind. Basically, like, that is inherently good to me. I feel like Jay would, now where you live, this has been around a little longer, so I don't know. You may know some cons that we may not know about yet that could possibly arise from it. But I mean, overall, are you on the same page? Like, it's a wonderful thing to introduce.
Yeah, I mean, for transparency's sake, I graduated high school in 2008, and this was not a thing. It's pretty new up here as well, but it's been around for at least a couple to a few years or so. I actually have a student in my youth group who's on his school's Overwatch team. He's a Reinhardt main. And I think it's a great thing. It's the same thing as a sport. I think you've already summed it up pretty well, Matt. I'm on board with it. I don't see any more cons than I do with, a normal sport. I hate to say normal sport, but a more traditional sport.
Right.
That's already out there. I don't think that there's anything to lose here that we're not already losing, and there's only stuff to gain,
Right. Which I agree with. I'm on the same page there. Let us know what you think about that specifically. If, in terms of, it doesn't even have to necessarily be organized gaming, but really, anything in terms of introducing something like this into a school setting. Is it a pro? Is it a con? And if regardless of which way you feel, to, elaborate a little bit, let us know where you stand on that. And then more importantly, go play Kingdom Hearts 3. I mean, what do you do? Why are you still here? At this point, don't listen to us. Go play. This game's way better than listen to us. Go do that.
If you're like me, where you're not going to play Kingdom Hearts 3, but you've caught up on the story, and you want to watch someone play, Matt's got a Let's Play coming out sometime eventually. But if you want to hop on it sooner than later, you can go ahead and just tweet at me, and I can point you in the direction of some people I've been watching.
Shameless plug for the J tweet. Hashtag @Let'sJays, I believe. Is that
always the best way to get in touch with me is usually Twitter or my Discord, which you can find on my Twitter.
Or if you're adept at necromancy, you could raise Joe from the dead, and then he actually kind of has like an internal tracker to Jay. But that's getting a little more into a convoluted way to do that. Twitter's just
and not
easier.
the most.
Twitter's
so much easier. It's free. It's you're not messing with dark spirits.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about breaking the time continuum, which always happens anytime you bring back from the dead. And you don't have to worry about the law of alchemy. There's all sorts of different things there. That's an anime reference for you, Jay, by the way. That just wanted to make sure you knew, because our Jay does not partake.
I don't anime.
Maybe one day, but thank you guys for stopping by to the official 2-Bit Gaming Podcast. Hopefully that name will work out. We're still looking into the logistics of everything, but I like it. Jay likes it. We're good with it. Thank you for stopping by. Hopefully to see y'all next week when we start talking about Anthem. And we'll hopefully have a little more content to really dig into for that one. Really, really looking forward to that and seeing what that game has to offer. Jay, any final words?
There were these 3 fish in a tank, and one of them turns to the other 2 and says, "Do either one of you know how to drive this thing?"
I'm going to cut it there.